All right, guys, we want to welcome back to the Everything Cultural Podcast. Today, me and Nick here with 2023 preview and prediction for the Utah Utes. Look at this coaching staff. Kyle Whittingham, he's been the lead man since 2005. 154 and 74 record all time. 7 10-plus win campaigns to his name. Looking at offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig, enters his fifth year in the role. And then Morgan Scalley's defensive coordinator, longtime Ute. He was there from 2001 to 2004 as a defensive back. He's been on the staff since 2007, enters his eighth role, homegrown Salt Lake City kid. Back-to-back Pac-12 crowns for the Utes, looking for a third straight, but when will a CFP berth occur is going to be the biggest headline here for Utah. Look at this offense. It was a unit that was just, perplexed by great balance. In the portal, they lost 10 guys, including starting center Paul Molley, who goes to BYU. They only added 3 guys, all of them at pass catcher. They returned 6 starters. 2 of the top 4 pass catchers and their top rusher in Tavion Thomas are gone. They do return the most production in the pack, though. They lose their top 2 guys up front in Dalton Kincaid. Looking at Cam Rising, this is a quarterback who really has come into his own the last couple years. There was a big QB battle back in the beginning of 2021. He ends up coming down on top. Coming off a torn ACL, though, suffered in the Rose Bowl. They expect him to be ready for the season opener, which I'd say is a pretty quick recovery. Plenty of toughness, though. Does very well as a runner. Plays above his size of 6'2", 218. Always falls forward. Good vertical passer. The velocity is below average. The accuracy and touch is certainly evident. Looking at the backfield, Micah Bernard, versatile player, spent some time at corner in 2021 even. He's a good blocker in terms of effort, great athletic abilities, dangerous run after the catch playmaker. He can make plays in space with some good straight line speed, elite burst, good cutback runner. He's a pass catching threat as well that briefly flirted with the portal. And the biggest breakout star for this offense last year, late in the season, was Jaquindon Jackson. He converted from quarterback. I believe he transferred over from Texas last year. He was great over the last month of the year. Great downhill runner who has great toughness and physical presence. He's a pure zone runner, used on inside a zone a lot. Has some good vision and loves the spin move at 6'2", 227. Cam Rising's ACL is something to watch, but I think this duo in the back here for Utah is one that can really spring this offense some more because, again, Jackson was phenomenal down the stretch.
It's very difficult to come back from an ACL tear, but if Cam Rising can get up to the level he was playing at last year, this Utah offense is a fantastic unit. With him at the helm, 64.7% clear percentage, 3,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions for Rising. Very good numbers. In addition to 465 on the ground, plus 6 scores for him. I love Cam Rising a lot. Rave about him any day of the week. Very talented player, Micah Bernard. Underrated running back in the nation. Very talented. 533 yards on the ground, 5 yards per carry, and 4 scores for him. Jaquindon Jackson, he definitely broke out at the end of the last season. 531 yards on the ground, 6.8 yards per carry, and 9 scores for him. This is a very nice 3 pieces they have here. Very talented players that have all good experience. Cam Rising's a leader in the locker room, and it's a very steady, solid piece to have. Good accuracy, good arm.
And that toughness is a big reason why he's such a leader. You look at the pass catching group. Matt Cuvey, he was a player that was supposed to be great for them a season ago. Everyone knew that Utah had the best tight end duo in the country, and he made up half of that. Kincaid ended up having a phenomenal season, but a significant knee injury early on in September plagued his year. 19 grabs, 206, and 3 touchdowns. He was on his way to having a magnificent season of his own. Really put it on the Gators of 105 yards in the season opener. This is a versatile tight end. He's using a variety of alignments. Good route runner, good body control. Certainly lacks size at 6'2", 222. Strength and top end speed is, not all that. It's pretty good, I'd say. So he could be a highly coveted NFL prospect in those regards. Coming off an ACL, though, is not great. The strength definitely needs a boost. So he's not going to be a guy that can, provide a lot as a blocker. But think of maybe an Evan Ingram type tight end, Nick, where they can move him around a good bit and show some good speed, where they can use him underneath in a variety of different alignments. What are your thoughts on Cuvey? And then you want to match that with the rest of this receiving core, where it's a good move by the staff to address the lack of depth at pass catcher. They added Micah Pittman. He's a reliable slot option who has great ball security. Emery Simmons has some good experience from Indiana. And then tight end Landon King from Auburn. Money Parks, 5'10", 170. He was a good, efficient player. Didn't play all that many snaps, though, only 400 or so. Devon V. Lee, he's the standout of this receiving group, a 6'5", 205. Good possession pass catcher. Wind up wide as an X. That's mainly his role. I think on paper, the starters they have is really good, but the depth is certainly the biggest concern over the past couple years, which has not really plagued them that much. But I think to be a truly elite offense, they certainly need to figure things out in that area.
Sure, Cooley's undersized, but he's a great player with a good high football IQ, great route runner, knows what he's doing, highly coveted prospect for a reason, very talented player. Again, coming off an ACL tear, so another player fighting injuries for this Utah Utes team, but a very talented player nonetheless. I think Cooley will be a huge part of this offense. I like what they did in the portal, but I also like what they have. I think Money Park's a very talented wide receiver. He had some good numbers last year, 414 yards, 15.9 yards per catch, 2 scores for him. Veely as well, good player, 695 yards, 12.6 yards per catch, and 5 scores for him. Micah Cope as well, underrated piece. He had 75 yards and 10.7 yards per catch and 1 score. Very underrated piece, the redshirt sophomore. They made some work from the portal as well, and they grabbed some different pieces in here. This is not an incredibly talented unit, but there are some good players here who really are going to play above expectations, and they're really going to fight for this Utah team.
And looking at what they have up front, Keaton Billis was a good player at left guard. Really expected to take that next step. Michael Mukafasi really struggled at right guard, but he is a redshirt sophomore, so plenty of development left for him. 6'4", 321. He's also a converted defensive lineman, so that's not good for opponents when they had a guy starting up front last year for a really good old line. He just made his way to this side of the ball. Falcon Kumatuli, 6'8", 301. He's a man down the left tackle spot, had around 100 snaps. He was awful as a pass blocker. Kalenu Faui was a good performer. His 90 snaps at center. He's 6'3", 319. Satu Lamila was awful. He allowed 32 pressures at right tackle. The offensive line, though, Nick, is featured based on size and physicality, not exactly talent. Only 4 players on the offensive line since 2017 have been drafted. This is not an NFL prospect factory by any means, but they have the top offensive line in the conference, just, again, based off their size and the physicality they play with. Tons of toughness here for the Utes up front.
A lot of toughness, certainly. Good thing to have. I like the left side a lot with Bills anchoring the interior on the left side. Very talented player. As well, like what they have at center and they have at the right side as well. It's a very talented unit. Great size overall. These guys are good pass blockers. Nice physical offensive linemen. This is a great unit.
A for me. They needed to certainly establish some better depth at pass catcher, but you look at these numbers, what they were able to do last year. Certainly when they get down in games, kind of like the UCLA one where their defense didn't really help them out, times certainly got tough. Penn State, Cam Rising was out. They were already kind of getting beat up in that one, so it wasn't all that great. And I think you've seen shades of that against Florida also, where they don't really play well from behind. They can't really stick to their identity of running the football, winning with play action. So I think that's something you certainly got to monitor. But overall, this was, the epitome of balance. I was very happy with this offense. Cam Rising back is big for them. Like the backfield. And then the additions to the receiving core make things even better. The match of a really impressive O-line. A for me, not going to give them that coveted A+, but I think this is a very sound unit, one of the most underrated in the country.
Certainly an A unit for me as well. I think Cam Rising is just a great leader in the locker room. Very talented quarterback. So much talent out of him. Brent Cooley, fantastic tight end, while the wide receiving room is not very depth. I do like the piece they have in there, and this very solid offensive line to block for this great running back room. This is a very good offense, A offense, certainly.
Now, if someone points it out, Utah was down in those USC games, since I just made a point of how they don't do great when they're down. That defense is awful, so I'm not really going to count that. They do show great poise is one thing. I'd like to see more out of their passing game when they're down in those games, if it comes to be. Look at the defensive side of the ball. This is a very stacked unit that returned 8 starters, lost 8 guys in the portal, added only 4. 3 notable losses in Gabe Reed, R.J. Hubert, and Clark Phillips. Look at this defensive line, though. Junior Tafuna, he was the biggest force on the interior. He's up to 6'4", 304. Still has some good athleticism for his size. Samadi Pipa, he's down to about 6'3", 330. He was a good run clocker. Akil Vimai, 307 pounds. He was flat out poor on the interior. Quite deep, experienced pass rushing group led by Van Fillinger. Really struggled with health last year, but he's an important figure in containing the run. He's been a good pass rusher also in the past. Jonah Ellis was a really good, powerful player. Established a nice edge duo. Connor Toole, an impactful player. The unit doesn't feature much bend, but they have plenty of raw athletic ability and some nice strength. Guys like Ellis, Toole, Van Fillinger. I think when this unit's fully healthy, it's going to be one that's very dominant. Another part of the trench is much like the offensive line. Only 4 players drafted on the D-line since 2015. So once again, Whittingham's school is not an NFL draft factor by any means, but they continue to win with size, physicality, pure strength, and again, just toughness, Nick. These same characteristics are why the Utes are so good, and nobody can crack them.
Certainly they do. Are a physical fighting team. Jonah Ellis, good numbers for him. 26 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks for him. Junior Sefolu, good numbers as well. 27 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack for him. Samoti Papa as well. 27 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks for him. Van Fillinger, I like him on the right side. I expect a big breakout year at him. He had 18 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. He could certainly get to double digits this year on the right side. I love him coming off that right edge. This is a good unit who's very physical. These guys hit hard. They get after the quarterback, and they really make good plays in the backfield.
And looking at the middle of the defense, Lander Barton was expected to be on the field of how high of a recruit he was. Very strong impact he provided was really good versus the Ron, top tackler. Also made some waves as a pass rusher at 6'4", 230 whenever he was needed to blitz up the middle. Karen Reed, more of a veteran that was also really good in all facets. Some solid turnover in terms of depth, a few guys transferred out. Lavani Damani from Stanford, he was not good at all. He also had a tough job, though, of playing behind that awful D-line for the Cardinals. Has shown meaningful impact in the past as a run stopper. This seems to be a really good fit. He's not going to have as many responsibilities or that big of a headache playing behind this D-line. Josh Calvert's been around a while. Doesn't have any experience, though. Overall, I'm very happy with what they have up front. I think this is a great front seven, front six, whatever they have to go with on specific plays and drives. Very happy with the D-line and this linebacking core. They just complete was one of probably the best 6s or 7s in the conference.
Lander Barton is a fantastic player. 46 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks for him. Kareem Reed, 72 total tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks for him. This is a very good unit. This front seven's good. They're hard-hitting. These guys are physical. They fight in the trenches every single game. It's a great unit to have.
Looking at the secondary, again, we placed Clark Phillips and R.J. Hubert. 9 of the team's 12 interceptions came from those 2 players, so that's certainly something you got to monitor. Jatravis Broughton was an admirable performer last season. Some big expectations this fall following the loss of Phillips. Zamai Vaughn was really stout in coverage as an outside coverage corner. Experienced, talented duo out wide. Depth certainly iffy, and Kenzel Lawler, Fabian Marks only saw a couple snaps each. Slot is a mystery as Phillips played that role often. Cole Bishop played in the slot the second most snaps. I love Bishop, a great physical pass rusher. Lays the boom versus the run. Versatile patroller that was also very stout in coverage. He's one of the top DBs in all of America. Sion Vaki, he's expected to replace Heward at safety, but is capable of being a good player in the slot. Did that for the most part last season. So I think the secondary is a very strong unit too. I don't think it compares to the linebacking or defensive line units, but this is not a bad part of this football team by any means.
It's a good secondary. I do like some of the depth they have here. Some of these pieces are very talented. Cole Bishop, really good returning player. I like what you see out of him with 83 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss for him, plus 1.5 sacks. He's a really good natural leader. I like him a whole lot. Good in the slot, certainly a good piece to have. I think there's other pieces here. Jatravis Barton as well, 46 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack for him. I'm certainly concerned with the lack of interceptions, obviously losing all that interception production in Clark Phillips and R.J. Hubert, but overall I think it's a good unit that has some nice pieces that can play on the interior, on the exterior. Very talented unit overall.
The Utes allowed less than 65 yards in each of the final 4 games of the regular season. Against Penn State in the Rose Bowl, out 169 and a couple of scores. So things got a little out of hand there, but they weren't poor by any means. Certainly things shifted once Rising got hurt. So their run defense was flat out elite, Nick. I'm going to go with an A- here. They need to limit the big plays, especially through the air. That was probably the one plague they had, despite these numbers being as good as they were. That was one big area for them they struggled in, was giving up big plays. You've seen that numerous times throughout the season, especially in that UCLA game. The game I picked the Utes to win, and they just got absolutely hammered in that one on the defensive side of the ball. So this is a really good unit, very sound from top to bottom, got all the characteristics and the playmakers you want in a strong physical defense. A- for me. How do you rate them?
It's a good unit. I'm going to go A- as well. There's so much talent here. Very physical, hard-hitting defense. The front seven's fantastic. Secondary certainly could use a little bit of improvement. Got to limit the big plays through the air. I get a little concerned about that. Certainly the pass yards per game is a little too high at 222.6, 60th in the nation. You just want to see that number get reduced. But overall, it's a very good, hard-hitting unit. Great defense.
Look at the schedule preview and prediction. Typical Utah, veterans galore, power and toughness in the trenches. Run game will continue to stifle opponents while the defense shares the same characteristics. Secondary is well equipped to avoid any fall-off, but the loss of Phillips could burn them in some critical situations. The team has received virtually no respect or attention, it seems, this offseason due to the superstar offenses in this conference. You look at Oregon, Washington, USC, you pair that up with Deion Sanders arriving. No one's giving this team any attention, Nick, but at the same time, the schedule is tough, and this team did lose 4 games last season. If the offense struggles, the defense doesn't seem to do the heavy lifting. That kind of seemed to be the theme last year, at least in the Florida, Penn State, UCLA games. That seemed a little true. I think that they will lose to the tougher opponents this year. I'll give them an early season win over Baylor in Waco. But this schedule is brutal when you look at the road games. But once again, I definitely think this team is being a little disrespected. The factors I mentioned, though, certainly make a little bit of sense.
This is certainly a tough schedule. This is one of the nation's toughest schedule. Very underrated how hard this schedule is. People are not talking about how tough this schedule is. Just look at the out-of-conference. Hosting an SEC program, very tough. Utah lost to Florida last year. Of course, in the Swamp's a lot different. I think this Florida team is very bad this year. So I certainly think Florida is not going to be too tough to play against Utah up there. But at Baylor, that's 2 tough out-of-conference opponents back-to-back right there. And then the road splits in the conference are tough. At Oregon State, at USC, at Washington, at Arizona. All very tough road splits. They really got a tough draw there. They host Oregon at home, so they dodge a trip to Eugene, which is nice. But outside of that, tough as well, playing UCLA, Colorado, and Cal. This is a tough schedule. This is one of the toughest in the nation. Like I said, in my opinion, top 10 toughest in the nation easily. There's so much talent on these teams they're facing on the offenses. I just worry this defense cannot keep up against the likes of USC, Oregon, schools of that nature. Very tough schedule. 8-4. Utah fans are not going to be happy with us, certainly. They expect to be competing for another Pac-12, looking to go three-peats, certainly, and back to the Rose Bowl. I just don't see it happening this year, considering how tough this schedule is. It really is a brutal schedule. It's a shame because this is a very talented team. But Kyle Whittingham went out and scheduled tough opponents, and this is certainly what he gets from it. If they can find a way to run the table, they'll certainly be in the playoff and have one of the strongest resumes in college football this season. Even if they have a loss here and they end up with only one loss towards the end of the season, they will have certainly a great shot at the college football playoff based off the strength of the schedule.
October 21st at USC should be an interesting one. One loss or zero, regardless, if they're in that area, this is going to be a big-time game. They might decide the conference. Caleb Williams is very, very angry to get this team's revenge against the Utes. That'll be a big one to watch. And then that sets them up for a very interesting rest of the year if they can beat USC on the road. Very interested to see what Utah does. A lot of potential here. Should be exciting. The Pac-12 seems to be the most competitive it's ever been this year, Nick. I appreciate you joining me.
Pac-12 is extremely competitive in one of the last years, as we know it, with UCLA and USC leaving. It's very exciting because this is going to be a dogfight for all these teams involved in the last year of normality in the Pac-12. Very excited to see what we can see out of this conference.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.